Welcome back. A village in Doma, local government area of Nasarawa State, is a predominantly agrarian community with a population of 16,000. Well, the community is said to be over 500 years old, is hardly accessible except by motorcycle owing to the absence of motorable road in addition to lack of basic and social amenities. Our community report tonight examines the plight of the residents who are appealing to the state government to come to their aid.
Etisola, now you're talking.
The sign that welcomes into Abashi village in Doma local government area of Nasarawa State is perhaps the best thing to expect from the community. This is because the long and dusty ride ends in disappointment for the visitor. For a village that consists of about 20,000 people, the place looks like a ghost town. The buildings are sad reminders of the communal clash that tore the community apart. But that was 4 years ago, and nothing has been done to make the people forget. Residents gather to fetch water from this well, and that is in the presence of this water project, which has clearly been abandoned. The fate of the healthcare center is the same.
Hello?
The farmlands are barren from inactivity, an indication that the residents have tried and just about given up. And to make matters worse, they grapple with the threat of herdsmen and cattle destroying the little they gather from the farms to make a living in the marketplace. This resident recommends a solution to keep the people safe.
The security personnel here are not enough. We want the government of the day to do us a favor by sending more security personnel to the outfit here so that they can take care of all this menace.
As always, the government claims to have a master plan to rescue the situation.
The first one is construction of feeder routes, and that's what we intend to do, both leading to the town and within the town itself. We are trying to do that this year. And then we are also aware of the water crisis they have there. We are awarding contracts for construction of boreholes in Abashi.
Intent is certainly what the authority has to better the lot of the people in Abashi. But the hope of the older generation, who have been disappointed time without number, is that if and when the government live up to their promise, the future of their children will be brighter than what they are faced with now.
Etisola, now you're talking.
It is estimated that 100 million Nigerians now live below the poverty line, and with the minimum wage at 18,000 naira, many wonder how with corruption, high unemployment rates, security challenges, the country can escape the scourge. Determined to end the cycle of poverty, President Muhammadu Buhari recently launched an economic growth and recovery plan aimed to steer the nation out of the deep waters. In this report, our correspondent Oroluwa Shonibare examines poverty and the leadership's plans to rescue the situation.
The negative side of poverty is very much evident in our society today, with people grabbing whatever they can from others forcibly. In economic terms, poverty can be described as a condition in which a community lacks the financial resources and essentials to enjoy the minimum living standards. Some popular factors said to be responsible for poverty include corruption, unemployment, absence of economic diversification, political instability. Ever since coming to power, the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari has made it its mandate to tackle poverty. And the launch of the Economic Growth and Recovery Plan, with an objective to guide the nation out of recession, is seen as a step in the right direction.
Our aim, simply put, is optimize local content and empower local businesses. We seek not just to take the Nigerian economy out of recession, but to place it on a path of sustained, inclusive, and diversified growth.
In achieving this, however, there are milestones that must be surmounted. For the Emir of Kano, Muhammadu Sanusi II, the leadership is to blame for the failure of systems in the country over the years. At a recent forum in Kaduna, northwest Nigeria, he spoke of the need to look inward and correct the ills that have brought the nation to this point of economic desperation.
In northern Nigeria in particular, the governments need to conserve their resources for those areas where government has failed in the last few decades. We need to invest in education. We need to invest in healthcare. We are in denial.
Nigeria's poverty rating has for many years been abysmal, leaving the man on the street somewhat disillusioned, pondering whether fighting corruption will end poverty or if fighting poverty will end corruption. Orelu Ashonibare, Channels Television News.
Definitely a very dire issue to be looked at. Joining us to discuss this at the news at 10 is Babatunde, Mr. Babajide Ogunsanwo. He is our house data as well as in-house information analyst. Many thanks for joining us in the news at 10. Well, let's start with, the last thing, the last sentence with regards to poverty alleviation. Will fighting corruption end poverty, or will fighting poverty end corruption?
Good way to start. So it's better for us to look at the data. And perhaps no other data that is more accurate than the World Bank indicator on control of corruption indicator. And here's why it's very relevant. It's because for over 2 decades, they've been monitoring corruption in over 180 countries. And just recently, an economics professor from the Harvard Kennedy School did some detailed research on the relationship between poverty and corruption. And he made some stark conclusions. And I'll summarize it in 3 narratives. His first narrative is that countries that were rich had lower levels of corruption. His second narrative was that he found out that countries that were able to reduce their level of corruption did not significantly grow faster than countries that didn't reduce their level of corruption. His third conclusion was where the secret lied, and that was in the World Bank Governance Effective Indicator. Based on his research, he concluded that countries that were able to increase their level of effective governance did achieve faster growth rates compared to countries that focused on corruption. And so his conclusion was fighting corruption will not end poverty. But however, you and I, are we still concerned about ending corruption? Yes, we are, because of the evil and injustice caused by corruption. But we need to remember that casting the bad into the sea does not suddenly mean the appearance of the good onto our shores. And so, yes, in the fight against poverty, corruption plays a role, but it's also important that we focus on effective governance.
Let me talk to you about what the Oxford Poverty and Human Development Initiative said about more than half families living in Africa are classified as poor. What do you think are the challenges that are specific to Nigeria in the fight against poverty?
So from that report, we can identify 3 main challenges. And what are these 3 challenges? And that's from history. And let's look at a third of a century ago, under President Shagari. What was our poverty score then? It was 27%. In simple terms, 2 out of 10 Nigerians were poor. Now let's look at what has happened over time. Up until the beginning of the Fourth Republic, when 6 out of 10 Nigerians were rated as poor. So we've seen our poverty go up and down like piano bars. And today, based on even the economic recovery and growth plan, we still have 6 out of 10 Nigerians that are poor. So the first narrative is we've had very inconsistent results on managing poverty. Over 17 years, we are still at that same level. 6 out of 10 Nigerians are poor. That's the first narrative. What is the second narrative? The second narrative is we need to have a positive attitude towards the fight against poverty. And I'll share a short story about 2 gentlemen, Ibrahim and Ife. a wildlife organization had given them a 100 million naira reward if they did find a particular wolf. And so they went on this journey trying to look for this wolf, and for several days and nights they didn't find. So they slept off. And in the middle of the night, Ibrahim heard some noise, and he opened his eyes and he saw nearly 70 wolves surrounding them with very shiny eyes, and he could hear the low growls from their rumbling throats. And he nudged the gentleman that was beside him, Ife, and he told him, Ife, I think we are rich. Now, one perspective could be danger. The second perspective is to see the opportunities. So what the government needs to do is to look at the opportunities of being able to capture these millions and millions of Nigerians who are poor into the employable sector and earn so much taxable income from them. So where the opportunities are is really the amount of money the country can make from the poor if we do get them into employment. So we need to have a positive attitude. And the third is for us to properly allocate resources. And what do I mean by properly allocating resources? Let's look at the fact that the states have a net FAC amount that has gone to the states between January and February this year. The amount is 244 billion naira has gone to the states. How much has gone to the north? How much has gone to the south? And I'll share that information with you shortly, and I think it will surprise you. But before then, let's look at what the Oxford said, the Human Development Initiative said about poverty in Nigeria. And they've classified it into two. They've said poverty in Nigeria is centered in the north. So 82% of the poor are in the north and 18% are in the south. But going back to the fact, the 244 billion naira net amount that has been given to the states, how much has gone to the north? How much has gone to the south? Only 18% of the net amount of FAC to the states has gone to the north, while significantly higher amount has gone to the south that has less number of poor people. So we can see a mismatch in allocation of resources. And some do argue that, okay, so what happens to the IGR that the states also earn? So we looked at the IGR, 1 trillion naira of IGR, 2015 and the first half of 2016. That's all the IGR all the states have made, 1 trillion naira. That sounds like a lot of money. But we then find out that out of the 1 trillion naira worth of IGR we've earned in 1.5 years, only 18% has come from the north. So we clearly have to allocate resources more effectively.
Interesting that you called it a mismatch. Others might call it something else. In the fight against corruption, do you think that it should be the responsibility of the federal or the state government?
It depends. And on the lighter mood, it makes me remember what my father would say. And he would first of all ask me that, are you first an Ijebu man or a Nigerian? And for several years, I couldn't answer. But let's look at what the Constitution says. So the right to give a passport is on the exclusive list. It is not for states to do. And even in the Constitution, Section 17, subsection 3, talks about securing adequate means of livelihood for Nigerians. And that's the responsibility of the federal government. So I think the federal government should lead the fight against corruption, and it should create disciples from the state. But speaking about securing adequate means of livelihood that was defined in Section 17, subsection 3 of the Constitution, we should now ask ourselves, what does adequate mean? Now, even though the Constitution doesn't define what adequate means, the UN has helped us to do that. And so they define that poverty line by $1.90, equivalent of 580 naira. So we need to ask ourselves, how many Nigerians can afford 580 naira? So who is a Nigerian? And the first way is to say, is a Nigerian that man that holds a passport? And the evidence based on what we know today is that not so many Nigerians even hold a passport. Not so many Nigerians even have a BVN number. Less than 30 million people have a BVN number. So the Nigerian passport perhaps isn't the way to define who is a Nigerian. Should our black skin be used to define a Nigerian? Perhaps not, because we've got 1 billion Africans, and being black doesn't make you Nigerian. What makes you Nigerian is this: an empty plate. The evidence shows that there are more Nigerians with an empty plate than either a passport or BVN number. But we shouldn't lose hope, because even the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, clearly, if it is implemented, as said, within 4 years, poverty will reduce from 6 out of 10 to 5 out of 10. We hope the government can achieve that, and we hope if they do achieve that, it will bring more jobs into the economy and it will make more youths smile.
Thank you so much. We're going to leave that mental picture in our heads. Mr. Babajide Ogunsawo, he's our in-house data and information analyst. Many thanks for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Still ahead on the news at 10, Lewis Hamilton takes victory at the Chinese Grand Prix, trailed by Ferrari's Sebastian Vettel and Max Verstappen of Red Bull. That's in sports. Do stay with us.